I'm assuming many of you, I don't know, maybe not. I'll give you a brief update on him. But Warren Buffett is a famous name. Warren Buffett, he's the fourth richest human being alive. He is probably the most well-known investor of all time. He is one that I started with. I always tell people who are starting a household, starting a career, and ask for financial advice. I always say, you can't go wrong if you start with Dave Ramsey and finish with Warren Buffett. Those are two that, I mean, there are plenty of other great names and great ways and great things to follow, but Dave Ramsey will get you out of debt and get you on budget, and your house will be so tight the doors will squeak when you open them. I mean, that's Dave Ramsey's method, and then Warren Buffett will show you the long-term way to develop wealth investing. They're just both really, really brilliant, and I like the humility of Warren Buffett. But Warren Buffett, every year, he donates a lunch with himself to a foundation in San Francisco called Glide. And it's a foundation for homeless people who are down on their luck. They help people get back on their feet, develop job skills, resumes, everything else. And he donates a lunch with himself every year to this foundation, and this foundation auctions it off to make money. The auction just closed this year for the 2019 lunch with Warren Buffett at $4.5 million. Let me just say this right now. If any of you in here have the kind of stroke that I can auction off a lunch with you for $500,000, we could do so much more for the kingdom of God. If that's you, you just let me know. I'll set up the auction and we'll book the restaurant. I promise it'll be a great place. I mean, can you imagine that? $4.5 million was paid to have lunch with Warren Buffett. Get this, the guy who won the auction is a 28-year-old kid. He's got $4.5 million to spare. Why not, right? On top of that, he started a cryptocurrency company called Tron. So he's done extremely well for himself. And this kid, and this is the craziest thing, is Warren Buffett has been very vocal about not believing in cryptocurrency. He's not a fan of cryptocurrency, and this 28-year-old kid paid $4.5 million to have lunch with a guy that does not believe in what he's doing. He's either crazy or brilliant. I'll probably land on the brilliant side of things. But Warren Buffett was interviewed afterwards, and this has been going on forever. Last year's lunch went for $3.5 million, so it just bumped it $1 million. And they asked Warren Buffett, they said, what do you think about people paying that kind of money to simply have lunch with you, to spend an hour and a half with you and eat and ask you questions? And this is what Warren Buffett said. It's kind of amazing. He said, the one universal characteristic with all the winners of this auction is that they have a good time and feel like they've gotten their money's worth. Wow. I'm saying, what on earth can Warren Buffett say in one lunch that is worth $4.5 million? Got me thinking to myself, like, what would I pay to have lunch with somebody, and what on earth could they say to me that would be worth $4.5 million? Am I the only one that thinks this is nuts? You're like, oh yeah, $4.5 million lunch, not a big deal. He probably still has to pay for lunch too. Like, is it included? You know? But I mean, it's amazing. And so I'm sitting here thinking about this, and I can't offer you a lunch with Warren Buffett. However, I can offer you something far greater than lunch with a man of Warren Buffett's caliber. I can offer you a sermon from Solomon, who was the richest person to ever walk the face of the planet. So I was a little worried they'd come off like a cheesy pastor joke. You know, like, I can't give you Warren Buffett's lunch, but I can give you Solomon in a sermon. It only cost you $500,000. So, but Solomon, here's the thing with Solomon. And I think for those of you, and I read a lot from the Jeff Bezos and the Bill Gates and the guys who are some of the richest guys in the world. I mean, they've got there for a reason. I like to read some of their principles and disciplines that they have, everything else. So when you talk about guys of that caliber, you instantly elevate what they can say in your mind. You pay $4.5 million for lunch with them. What I want you to gather before we jump into Psalm 127, which Solomon wrote Psalm 127, is this, that Solomon could have paid for Warren Buffett with $100 bills in his wallet. Solomon's wealth on the low end, MSN did an evaluation of wealth of Solomon according to Scripture. And they said at the very bare minimum, because we don't get a lot of the quantities that he had imported to him or the quantities that were given to him, they said from what we know, at a bare minimum of Solomon, that he had a net worth of $2.2 trillion. And they said probably significantly more than that. But Solomon, let me give you the background with Solomon. Solomon was following the Lord. He was faithful to the Lord. He's the son of David. And he was following the Lord well. So in 1 Kings chapter 3, the Lord appears to him in a dream and says, Solomon, I will give you whatever you ask for. I will grant it for you. And Solomon said, Lord, give me wisdom to lead your people. I'm going to be the next king, so give me wisdom so that I can lead your people well. And the Lord said, I am so pleased, Solomon, with your request that not only will I give you wisdom to lead the people, but I will give you riches and fame unheard of in all the earth. You will be the wealthiest man alive. You will be the most successful king to ever take the throne. You will be the guy. Now, if we jump to 1 Kings 10, 14 through 29. Guys, I think I gave this to you. Yes, I did. Walk with me through this. I'm trying to qualify the resume of the man who wrote Psalm 127 to take you to even a higher level of faith, okay? We just talked about Warren Buffett. He's worth, I think it was 68 million or something like that, or 68 billion. I could be low. We're talking about a guy with 2.2 trillion in 930 BC. This dude is the real guy when it comes to making wealth. Let me read you through his portfolio. 1 Kings 10, 14 through 29. It says, each year, Solomon received about 25 tons of gold. That is equivalent to $287 million each year. Now, get this. This did not include the additional revenue he received from merchants and traders, all the kings of Arabia, and the governors of the land. That's just his mailbox money. $287 million every single year, just arriving. It's the dividend. It's just showing up in the account. He's not doing anything for it. So listen to this. And what you have to understand about Solomon is Solomon did not own stocks in a company. Solomon owned countries. Imagine somebody owning the United States of America and making every business owner, every governor, and every state representative pay him an annual tax. That's the caliber we're talking about with Solomon. Solomon didn't own stocks and companies. Solomon owned countries. It says it right here. This did not include the additional revenue he received from merchants and traders, all the kings of Arabia, and the governors of the land. He's just got $287 million showing up. Doesn't include his main revenue streams. Verse 16. King Solomon made 200 large shields of hammered gold, each weighing more than 15 pounds. He also made 300 smaller shields of hammered gold, each weighing nearly 4 pounds. The king placed these shields in the palace of the forest of Lebanon. Verse 18. Then the king made a huge throne, decorated with ivory and overlaid with fine gold. The throne had 6 steps and a rounded back. There were armrests on both sides of the seat, and the figure of a lion stood on each side of the throne. There were also 12 other lions, one standing on each end of the 6 steps. No other throne in all of the world could be compared with it. He had the nicest house out of anyone. I mean, he had gold lampposts lining his driveway to a throne surrounded by lions. This guy's got it figured out. Verse 21, all of King Solomon's drinking cups were solid gold. Only drinks out of gold. as were all the utensils in the palace of the forest of Lebanon. They were not made of silver, catch this, for silver was considered worthless in Solomon's day. You know what the main currency of the day was? Silver. You know what common workers' wages were paid for every single day? Silver. Solomon is saying the common man's wage is worthless to me. Like, I don't even waste my time with it. I won't even drink out of it. Make my cups out of gold. Pay those guys with silver. That's the kind of money Solomon is dealing with. Verse 22, the king had a fleet of trading ships. Trading ships in this day were jets today. So he's got his fleet of jets. The king had a fleet of trading ships of Tarshish that sailed with Hiram's fleet. Once every 3 years, the ships returned, loaded with gold, silver, ivory, apes, and peacocks. I don't know what the apes and peacocks are for, but he's got gold, silver, and ivory on this thing, right? He's got major, this is just on top of the $287 million annually. There's not even numbers on this, just ships of gold and silver and ivory and apes and peacocks. Like, they're just showing up. He's probably just like, just throw them on there. I don't know what they are, but they're great. Verse 23, so King Solomon became richer and wiser than any other king on earth. Verse 24. People from every nation came to consult him and to hear the wisdom God had given him. He had an incredible social media following. People just followed him from everywhere. They wanted to hear what he has to say. They wanted to know what was going on. Year after year, everyone who visited brought him gifts of silver and gold, clothing, weapons, spices, horses, and mules. Verse 26. Now let's get to the cars. Solomon built up a huge force of chariots and horses. He had 1,400 chariots. Those were cars today. He's got 1,400 in the garage, no big deal. And 12,000 horses. He's got horsepower on those cars. He stationed some of them in the chariot cities and some near him in Jerusalem. Verse 27, the king made silver as plentiful in Jerusalem as stone. Again, a comment about silver. That is just to magnify his wealth. He made common money as common as going out and picking up a rock. It was everywhere, and it surrounded him. The king made silver as plentiful as in Jerusalem as stone, and valuable cedar timber was as common as the sycamore fig trees that grow in the foothills of Judah. Solomon's horses were imported. All his cars are imports. From Egypt and from Cilicia, the king's traders acquired them from Cilicia at the standard price. Verse 29, at that time, chariots from Egypt could be purchased for 600 pieces of silver. Worthless to Solomon. Just buy them all. And horses for 150 pieces of silver. That should even give you a greater image of the kind of wealth that he had. The money that they used, that they saved up to buy chariots and horses is worthless, and yet he's just saying, keep bringing them on. They were then exported to the kings of the Hittites and the kings of Aram. 1 Kings 11, verse 3. I threw this in here too. I thought this was interesting. It says he had 700 wives of royal birth and 300 concubines. You know what jumps into my mind when I read that? He had 700 mother-in-laws. Think about that. 700 wives means this guy's got 700 mother-in-laws, right? And he's got 300 girlfriends. And in fact, and the Lord told him not to do that, but he did it anyway. And it says, in fact, they did turn his hearts away from the Lord, but he had 700 wives. This is important to note. You can see it on there, of royal birth, which means he had married into royal families 700 times. The multiplication of his wealth, his network of people. Imagine this guy. $287 million just arriving every day, ships coming and unloading stuff. Every king, every governor, every business of the land is paying him a tax, and he's married into 700 different families of royalty that expands his network of wealth to almost limitless money. You talk about a guy. We said Warren Buffett, and some of you that know who he is, you picked up like, oh, he's sharp. He knows what he's doing. Solomon dwarfed Buffett. Solomon owned countries. Solomon had wealth beyond all understanding. So we take that resume now, right? This is a guy worth listening to. This is a guy worth dialing into. He had more wisdom than any king that had ever ruled before him or after him, and he made more money than anybody to walk the face of the planet. This is a guy worth listening to, and yet Solomon comes about, and we know he took the journey with the children of Israel to the land of Jerusalem for the festivals of worship, and as he's going up, he wrote a psalm of ascent. So as they're ascending to Jerusalem 3 times a year, they united together to worship in Jerusalem. They're all rising up, and Solomon had written this song. Imagine they're taking it and they're saying, wow, the richest man on the planet, the wisest man on the planet, nobody knows his wealth, wrote this song for us to sing as we go to encounter God to a whole new level. Now you have the context of where this psalm is coming from. This is powerful, powerful stuff. A guy who has accomplished more than what is it's actually unfathomable today to be able to do what Solomon did. He's accomplished and built up more than anybody. Yet he wrote this psalm. Now, let's listen to it. Psalm 127 says, a song of pilgrims ascending to Jerusalem, a psalm of Solomon. This is powerful. Unless the Lord builds a house, the work of the builders is wasted. Unless the Lord protects a city, guarding it with sentries will do no good. It is useless for you to work so hard from early morning until late at night, anxiously working for food to eat, for God gives rest to his loved ones. Children are a gift from the Lord. They are a reward from him. Children born to a young man are like arrows in a warrior's hand. How joyful is the man whose quiver is full of them. He will not be put to shame when he confronts his accusers at the city gates. Solomon, in verses 1 through 2, he mentions the big three. The big three, you have to understand, in Solomon's day, the most successful, wealthy, most powerful king to ever live, there was a grading test for kings to figure out how successful a king was. And there were 3 things that they evaluated kings on, okay? And Solomon lists them in verses 1 through 2. The first one is build. How much can you build? How big of a city can you build? How big of a house can you build? We read about the gold and the lamps and the lions and the throne and everything else at Solomon. The first thing that they measured a king on was how big can you build it. Nero literally leveled Rome and burned it to the ground when he became the Caesar of Rome so that he could rise up and rebuild Rome just so he can say, I rebuilt the city. This was the bragging rights of a king, was how big can you build it? Solomon says, unless the Lord builds a house, the work of the builders is wasted. The second thing that everyone looked to measure a king by was protection. How big can you build it? And then can you protect it? Can you build this massive empire in these cities with thousands and millions of people that exalt you and worship you? And then can you build gates around it? And can you build the army to protect it? The second thing that was the measure of a king was how can you protect it? Do you have the ability to protect it? Solomon says, unless the Lord protects a city, guarding it with sentries will do no good. And then the third, obviously, is accumulation, money. How big can you build it? Can you protect it? And how much money you got? How much you got in the bank? How much you got coming in on ships? How much do you have? And so Solomon says to them, it is useless for you to work so hard from early morning until late at night, anxiously working for food to eat, for God gives rest to his loved ones. Can I tell you what Solomon did? And then let me just challenge you for a moment. Solomon took the 3 most important principles of his professional life and he just challenged himself spiritually with them. He took the 3 most important things. Can you build it? Can you protect it? And how much do you have? How much money do you got? He took the three most important things to him professionally, and he turned them into spiritual foundations and spiritual truths, saying they're even more important at home. This really challenges me on a practical level, because I'll go to a meeting with you and I'll turn my phone off. But I'll go home at night and I'll ignore my kids for it. And professionally, I do the right thing. But personally, I come home and I will stay after church here and walk through these aisles and pick up the trash that you leave, just thankful that you were here, and pick up coffee cups and leftover notes and everything else, and I'll throw it all away. And then I'll get home and my wife will have left some trash in my truck, and I'll be like, why did you leave that Chick-fil-A wrapper in my truck? I'll get mad at her for doing what I will graciously do professionally. I will, when I don't feel like working, when I feel tired, when I feel worn out, when I don't feel as focused, when I feel like just, taking a day, I will force myself to focus, and I'll force myself to dial in, and I'll say, today you've got to do something to make something better. You've got to improve something. How can you make Jesus better? How can you make somebody's life? What can you do? But then I'll get home and I'll be tired and I'll be worn out, and they'll all want to play, and I'll say, I just need to sit down. I need a rest. And I'll look at my life, and there are times where, this is not just about me. This is you too. If your friends get the best of you and your family gets the worst of you, if you go out with friends, you're the best mom in the world on social media. Look at this little ice cream that I bought, and look at these toys that I bought, and all my kids love me. But then you go home and just ignore them. You're mad at them. You're yelling at them. You're screaming at everybody. You're nagging everybody or anything. We take these things and we look at our professional life and we see, I do some things professionally that I could really benefit from doing at home. Solomon takes it a step further. He says, if you're a great entrepreneur, if you're a great leader, you're a great businessman or businesswoman, or you're a great employee, or you're just a great person around your coworkers, he said, if you got that figured out, but your home's a mess, your work is worthless. What you are doing is worthless. What you are spending your time on is a waste. And he turns these three into some bedrock principles that we can grow from, and then he gives an incredible challenge at the end. Let's dive into these. The first one he says is build. He says if you can build it, but the Lord's not the center of it, it's not valuable. It's not worth it. He says in Psalm 127, verse 1, unless the Lord builds a house, the work of the builders is wasted. Jesus said the same thing, Luke 9:24. He says, if you try to hang on to your life, you will lose it. But if you give up your life for my sake, you will save it. Solomon says, if you're trying to build it and the Lord's not the center of it, you are wasting your time. May have an incredible resume professionally, and you may go home to a house that doesn't speak to each other. You're wasting your time professionally. Take those principles that have helped you to develop incredible disciplines and incredible things professionally and apply them to your home and make that more important. And then out of that, God's going to work through you. He's saying you've got to realize the Lord has to be the center of what you're building. I have an office at my house. It used to be kind of just this open space, and we converted it into an office. It actually turned out really, really cool. And I wanted some built-in bookshelves in there because I felt like they'd make me feel smarter. I was like, if I just had some bookshelves, I'd probably feel a whole lot smarter right now. So I looked into getting built-in bookshelves, but they were incredibly expensive to do. So I was like, you know what? Oh, yeah, you got it. Great. My wife will freak out if she saw that I showed you this picture. I got the Chick-fil-A cup right there. I got a roll of toilet paper on my stand. I don't know why that's there. But then you see the bookshelves, right? So I wanted to build some. And I was like, I got this, right? And I measured it all out. It was 8 foot right on the knot. So I was like, okay, I'm going to build them 7 foot 10 inches. I'm going to give myself 2 inches. And I went to Home Depot and I got some plywood, and I already had a Craig jig, and I already had wood glue, and I got the shelf pin Craig. You know, that it's just a really cool tool. So I could build shelf pins and everything. And I started ripping this plywood, and then I started making the boxes and putting them all together, and I glued every joint, and I screwed it all together, and I had it all sanded down, and I trimmed it all out. It looked awesome, right? I was like, yeah, preacher knows what he's doing, right? Yeah. And so then it became time to install them. So I took them and I went up to, all right, put that down because I'm going to get embarrassed here in a second now. Take that down. And so I took them up to my office, and I got into my office, and I was like, man, this is so cool. Built my own, built-in bookshelves. And I went to stand it up, and I mean, the build was perfect, right? 7 foot 10 inches, things are perfectly square. The only problem is 7 foot 10 inches fit perfect, snug, right? But lifting them up to 7 foot 10 inches, when they were like this, they were actually like 8 feet 4 inches. They were too long on the lift. I couldn't fully finish it off because, when you have something, follow me, I don't know, but you get the picture, right? It's a square. So a square like this is perfect. A square like that is taller. And so I'm pushing, I'm hitting the ceiling, and I'm like, I was so mad. It's like, what did I do? I spent so much time. I spent like 3 evenings on this thing. I had it all sanded down. I had pictures already taken. I had this real cool post I was going to do, like before and after. And look, and then it was like before and don't fit. And I didn't know what to do. And so I wound up literally having to cut the bottoms of them off. I had to cut like 8 inches off the bottom. That screwed up the box, and it was unsquared. It turned into a mess because I tried to build something for a room outside of the room. But then when I got everything that I needed and I got inside of the room, then it started coming together, and I got them on the wall because I built them and finished them inside of it. We do the same thing. We try to build this massive, incredible, awesome-looking life outside of what God has for us, and then we try to fit what we want in our life and what we want to build. We try to smash it into God's plan, and we wind up in this tension of constantly, I want to do what I want to do, and I want to build what I want to build, but God, I want you to be a part of it. I just want you to bless it. I just want your favor on it, but I don't want to mess with you too much. And what Solomon is saying is that recipe right there keeps you stuck. You have got to build your life inside of what God has for you. You've got to build it inside of His principles, inside of His Word. And if you're trying to build something in your life right now that doesn't line up with what He says about it, then that has to go. It's not, God, give me a second. Let me get this to where it's really good, and then maybe you'll welcome it in. No. God says, build it on my principles. Build it honoring me. Build it with my anointing on it. Build it with my power on it. And if you do that, you'll have something that lasts forever. Solomon is saying you cannot build something without the Lord in the center of it. You have to build it in the Lord. You have to walk in it in the Lord. You have to raise your children in the Lord. You have to build your marriage in the Lord. You have to build your family in the Lord. You have to lead in the Lord. And when it's in the Lord and He is the center of it, His blessing, it fits. It works. We've all been running. I had a crazy wilderness experience. College for me was like Vegas for some people. I just went to college and went nuts. And I remember trying to fit God into my life while doing whatever the heck that I wanted to do. And I was constantly in conviction. I was constantly in tension. I'd go crazy Friday through Saturday at 4 a.m. Then I'd wind up in church on Sunday morning, and I'd just sit there and feel terrible. And yet I would still go out the next Friday night. And I'm like, what is wrong with me? Why am I in it? Because I was trying to build something outside of what God had for me. And then when the Lord got a hold of my heart and He transformed my heart, and I said, I'm going to build this in you. And long story short, we wind up here today, and I'm a pastor. But that's because I built inside of the Lord and quit trying to build my own thing and do my own thing. That's number one. The second thing Solomon says is, unless the Lord protects a city, guarding it with sentries will do no good. In other words, you can't build whatever you want to build without the Lord and then try to protect it yourself. No matter how strong you are, how tough you are, how mean of a right hook you have, you can't protect like the Lord can protect. Jesus says the same thing, John 10, 25 through 30. This is the Message. I think it does a great job of translating this. It says, Jesus answered, I told you, but you don't believe. Everything I have done has been authorized by my Father, actions that speak louder than words. You don't believe me because you're not my sheep. My sheep recognize my voice. I know them and they follow me. I give them real and eternal life. They are protected from the destroyer for good. No one can steal them from out of my hand. The Father who put them under my care is so much greater than the destroyer and the thief. No one could ever get them away from him. I and the Father are one heart and mind. He's saying nothing can protect you like I can. Nothing can protect you like the Lord can. No bank account, no other person, no relationship, no friendship. Nothing can protect you like the Lord can. And Solomon says, until you realize that nothing can protect you like God can, you're wasting your time putting sentries outside of the cities. Because God's protection is the one that you need, and God's power is the one that you need. I had this friend who his daughter was asked to prom by the captain of the basketball team. High school kid, he was 6'4". Here's the problem. My friend's 5'8", right? And he's the dad. He's 5'8", and he's played basketball with this captain of the basketball team before, his high school kid who's 6'4". And, you know, he got beat up pretty good. He got taken to cleaners pretty good. So there's already this like, I don't know, inferiority or whatever. And then he finds out that his daughter was asked to the prom by this kid. And he's like, oh no. We got to do something about this. This kid already, and so he's like, honey, you tell this kid he needs to come ask me. And so this big 6'4" kid walks up to my friend and he says, hey, bud. And he's like, what? He's like, I need to take your daughter to the prom. I want to take your daughter to the prom. He said, if you can beat me in a basketball, if you beat me in a basketball game, we'll do it. And the guy was like, really? Okay, we'll do it. What he didn't know was my friend went to high school with a guy who played in the NBA, he was 6'9". And he had a friend who was 6'7". And so he said, we're going to play 3-on-3. He said, you bring your two friends and it'll be you three against me and my two friends, and we'll have ourselves a basketball game. And so the high school kid, he's 6'4", he come walking in, he's ready. And then my buddy's two friends, 6'9" and 6'7", NBA players, walked in, and the kid, they were like, you're not going to prom with this girl. You know, like, it didn't happen. I mean, they destroyed them, did not let them score a point. It was 11-0. And afterwards, my buddy who's a dad, he said, hey, sit down right there. And then 6'9" and 6'7" came and sat on each side of the guy. And he said, hey, you need to know something about me. I may not be tall and everything else and a good baller, but I've got friends who are. And both his friends said, yeah, and we protect his daughter. And, you know, they're both sitting, and the kid's just shrinking. You know, he went from 6'4" to 5'9" real quick, you know. And so then he says to him, so, you know, are you going to be a man of God on this day, on this prom? And the kid goes, yeah. And they're just squeezing him in, you know, and he's going to squeeze. And he said, what time are you going to have her home? And he said, 8:30. He said, okay, you can take my daughter. He said, but don't ever forget, you may be tall, but I've got somebody bigger. You may be strong, but I've got somebody stronger. Don't ever forget, you're not going to outdo me. And we all love my daughter. We got to remind ourselves of that too, that we may have problems, but we've got something bigger than our problems. We may have challenges up against us, but we've got something greater than our challenges, something stronger that protects us more than we could ever protect ourselves. I'm walking through this right now. I have to remind myself, Lord, you protect me greater than what any circumstance or any situation may say. I trust your protection more than I trust my own. And then he finishes here with, how much do you have? Can you build it? Can you protect it? And how much do you have? Psalm 127, verse 2. He says, it is useless for you to work so hard from early morning until late at night, anxiously working. That word anxiously working, the Hebrew word picture, is overworking, is only obsessing with work. All you want to do is work. All you live for is work. Your life is work. Anxiously working from morning until night for food. For God gives, and I love, there's another translation that says, for God provides to the ones he loves. For God gives rest to his loved ones. Mark 8, verse 36 through 37, Jesus said, and what do you benefit if you gain the whole world but lose your own soul? Is anything worth more than your soul? I think it's really important to emphasize here, especially with what Jesus said and with what Solomon is saying. Gaining is not the problem. Earning is not the problem. I am pro-earning. I don't believe God's people should be poor. I think God's favor, God's blessing on your life, you put him first. I pray every Thursday, every different day of the week, I pray different things for you. On Thursdays, I pray God would prosper you, that God would elevate you, that he would bless your business, he'd bless your job, he'd bless you with promotions, he'd bless you with bonuses. I believe and I pray for God to bless you, because when God's people are blessed, his kingdom is blessed. And when his kingdom is blessed, it advances further. I am pro-earning, go do it, build it, make it happen. The problem is not gaining, the problem is losing. Listen to the verse again. And what do you benefit if you gain the whole world? That's not the problem, but lose your own soul. The problem is getting lost in it. The problem is not earning it. The problem is not gaining it. The problem is when only thing you can think about and the only thing that you desire and the only thing that you long for is gaining more. I need more followers. I need more likes. I need more people. I need more relationships. I need more money. I need more this. I need more land. I've got to gain. I've got to build the empire. And you get lost in all of that. That's the problem. I was thinking about this. I was thinking, where do I get lost the most? How can I illustrate this? You got them? You got them right here? Let me just illustrate something for you. This is my sister, by the way. Will you give my sister a hand? Way to go, Lacey. She can't beat me in basketball, by the way. I just want all of you to know that. She may be a state champion. She may be a stud, but she can't do it. Right? She's like, I'm never coming to this church again. This right here. This is a huge vice for me. If you know me by now, you know that I love sweets, and I just want to show you, I really don't know what happened. I think I blacked out. I had a cup of milk, and then that was in one sitting. I ate 31 Oreo cookies. How do you, I'm not kidding you. I got so lost in this. I got so lost that I sat down, and I started, and I don't even taste them until after like 4 or 5 now, you know? And I got a 6-second timing on the milk, and then I go in, and then I got to, because if you go 5, it's crunchy. If you go 7, it's mushy. But 6 is on, and I sit there, and I literally looked over at this. And I am not kidding you. That happened. And I was literally asking myself, I was like, where did this come from? And someone was like, hey, I want to get you some Oreos. I want to bless you with some Oreos. And I was like, no, you're not blessing me. You're cursing me, because I don't know what happens, but I get lost in these things. That's what Solomon, he's saying, it's not about what you have, but it's about getting lost in what you have to a point where it's unhealthy for you and you don't even know who you are outside of it. If your bank account was empty tomorrow, if your friends quit following you tomorrow, if people quit exalting you tomorrow and it wasn't what you were trying to gain, you could no longer gain, would you still be you? Would you still be as passionate about Jesus? Would you still worship him the same way you did today? That's what Solomon is saying, that God gives you what you need when you build it, and you look to him for protection, and you find your refuge in him, and you realize that he is your provider. And then let me just 60 seconds, because I want to finish here. Psalm 127, 3 through 5. This is what he finished with, and I thought it was so powerful. Children are a gift from the Lord. They're a reward from him. Children born to a young man are like arrows in a warrior's hand. Verse 5, how joyful is the man whose quiver is full of them. This is the key. He will not be put to shame when he confronts his accusers at the city gates. Solomon is saying here, so when you get to the city gates and people are accusing you, and you go to court. It's a word picture of going to court. It actually, you can translate it, stands on trial. Some translations do. When you get to the city court and they put you in trial, he's saying the greatest character witnesses of your life should be your children. The greatest character witness of your life should be your family, should be your loved ones. What do they say about you? Your resume shouldn't be filled with employees and people and colleagues that just love you and rave about you. What does your household say about you? Do they think you're as gracious as your coworkers do? Do they think you're as loving as everybody who's surrounded you Monday through Friday do? He's saying that's your character witness. And when you hit a place where your family is your references and they're the ones saying, love Dad, he's faithful, he's honorable, he serves us, he's gracious. Solomon is saying that's when you've arrived. When your spouse can say it, when your family can say it, that's when you know you've gotten to where it goes. The wealthiest, richest man to ever walk the face of the planet throws it all away and says, start at home first.